again in a very strict Muslim environment, community people, all of that. I was never out. Um, I was just very effeminate as a boy. And that raised quite a few eyebrows, and I did get, um, in general, like probably a lot of LGBTQ people experience, which is at schools and in the community and in the local masjids and in the Muslim community and within the family circle, there is a lot of mocking and making fun of, and experiences of getting beat up and being ridiculed and called horrible names, and really made to feel evil, wrong, and bad for just being who I was. I mean, I was just naturally effeminate. I wasn't trying to be. In fact, if anything, I was trained and tried very hard to be masculine, which never really worked. So my experience with the non-queer Muslim community, especially in India, has been not good, to say the least. I mean, to say, my family has disowned me since they found out about my transition. So need I say more? And my extended family in India does not know. Like, my mother lives with my brother in London, and my sister lives in Canada. They're both married and have kids and stuff. My father passed away before he even knew that I'm trans, or maybe they were in denial, who knows, which is very common in such communities. When we don't want to hear about it, we don't want to talk about it. You're just Muslim, you're just a straight man, we need to get you married, and everything will be sorted out, and you'll be fine, and you get kids, and live a life like all other Muslims do. That very narrow view of living, very strict, not getting out of line, not thinking out of the box at all. To the point of not even wanting to have a conversation about it, no discussion. Like when I came out as trans, he just wanted to have, because by the time I came out as trans to my family, my father had already passed away, and I came out somewhere in 2012, 13, somewhere there, and I began my transition in 2009. So anyway, when I came out, his condition was that go back and reverse your entire transition. This was after I had completed my entire transition. I was a complete woman and living as a woman for years now. Go back and reverse the entire transition, reverse the entire process, and then you can be a part of this family, otherwise you're not. And because he was the older brother and the eldest male in the family, the tradition was that he was kind of the boss and the decision maker. Also because my mother had dementia and other health concerns, so she wasn't really in a position to make decisions. By the way, she does not know till today that I have transitioned, so I just speak to her on the phone, and she thinks she's speaking to her son because my voice hasn't changed much. Everything else has. So yeah, and I haven't seen my family probably 9 years now or more, and I don't know how and what and where, because I'm unwelcome to London, to my brother's place to see my mother, because I'm not detransitioning according to his demands. So I don't know, it's a tough decision, and I've had to sacrifice a lot to be true to myself, to be who I am. So that should tell you a little bit about the non-queer Muslim community that I come from. They're very religious, and they strongly believe that I've gone against Allah, against Islam. I have dishonored the family, dishonored Islam. I'm very selfish, etc., etc. And I will go to hell because of what I did, for sure. So my extended family in India and other places do not even know. Because I'm afraid they'll tell my mother, and my brother and sister don't want my mother to know because she's sick and she'll fall more sick because if she finds out. And the thing is, I am grateful to be able to live my truth, period. unlike millions others who are unable to do so for whatever reason. And I'm grateful for that, and so I don't need to impose my decision on my mother, whom I love very much, and she loves me, and she's old, and she's going to question her love and the way she raised me, and so I'm okay with it at this point, but I would love to see her before she passes, because I grew up very close to my mother and to my family. We were a very close-knit family, to mention the least. And now all of a sudden my brother and sister don't want to deal with me, and so yeah, it's a tough decision. I don't know how I'm ever going to be able to see my mother if possible. I would love to. I would love for her to know who I am. And I can't detransition. That's just not possible for me, and I don't want to. It took me 39 years of spiritual work, therapy, and whatnot to make the decision first, to come out and to actually do it, So that probably gives you an idea of the non-queer Muslim community, that I was, and because of my severe trauma growing up in India, especially with the Muslim community. My father was very religious, like extremely religious. He wasn't like a terrorist or anything, unlike people believe. He just was very, very religious, a devout Muslim, and he was very strict about following the Quran and 5 times namaz and prayer and everything, 24/7. That's all we talked about, and that's all he wanted us to do. And he was very forceful about it, and that was very traumatizing. Like, he would physically abuse us to make sure that we prayed and followed every rule and regulation. So that has probably kind of made me almost allergic to strict Islam. I live near a mosque, like 2-minute walking distance from a mosque where I live here in the United States, in Los Angeles. It's a small mosque, and I have never stepped in there because I'm so terrified. And because I've lived in that place for, say, 8-9 years, and they have seen me transition, the community around there, the people around there have seen me transition from male to complete female, and I get, all kinds of calls and faggot and this, that, and the other, and get mistreated just taking a walk around the block to meditate, to de-stress. So that's my experience with the non-queer Muslim community, which is very unfortunate, and I'm really grateful that we are having this session, and we have MPV, Muslims for Progressive Values. This is a great way to really move forward and allow people like us to feel included. Thank you.
Thank you, Maya. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. I'm going to ask a question that I plan to ask maybe later, but I'm going to move it up. Based on what you just shared, and maybe Naveed, you can answer first, how do you protect yourself from the maybe traumatic, harmful, hateful experiences you've had, being who you are?
Well, there's been a lot of different strategies over the years. When I was little, we were sent to Arabic school, which I loved, and I was, I was a kid, but I was still sensitive to, I guess, ideas that were either sexist or homophobic, and the way I dealt with it was probably not very conventionally. I was kind of a loudmouth when I was a kid, and I questioned everyone. I questioned my teachers. One time, and my older brother was in my class with me, and he, much to his chagrin, I would just blurt out things like, why do men get to marry, up to 4 times and women don't? And the teacher would be very, sort of angry about that because no one questioned him on any of that stuff. And he just said, well, that's just the way it is. And I said, well, no, I want to know the answer. And I think I was 12 years old. He said, well, because if a woman has more than one husband, you'll never know who the child is, who the child belongs to. But if a man has 4 wives, you always know who the child belongs to. And I'm like, I think it's the woman that carries the child for 9 months and gives birth to the child. So I think that's who it belongs to, don't you? And, you know, of course my brother's like telling me to shut up. And I don't know, I think the way I dealt with it was, or I deal with the animosity that I think we get as queer Muslims is, I'm certainly hoping I'm not as sarcastic as I was at 12, but I do want to confront people. I want to confront, not in a bad way, but I just want to ask people, why do they think what they think? Is it just because of something they've been programmed into, or is it something that through ijtihad, which is a tradition in Islam, or actually a tenet of Islam, where we're required to use our reasoning, use our judgment, use our analytical skills to understand the world around us. Either how they get to their points of view, or how their points of view is better for all of humanity. Yeah, I mean, there are times where I don't feel that bold, and I avoid the anger and the rhetoric and the judgment, and I do closet myself. I don't like doing that, but I think it's necessary at times. I think that, I'm in a very privileged position, I know. I mean, certainly considering my story, I've had a lot more luxuries as a male, cisgendered male in America. The challenge for me is to be out as much as possible, and when I am, I'm out and proud about it.